the first 2 years of art school, I mean, it depends from school to school, but freshman year is kind of like boot camp a little bit. They really, actually, freshman year was really cool because they kind of strip you down. Like whatever you learned from high school art class, they just like throw that away, and we're gonna like we're gonna restart. We're gonna start from the beginning, and like like the biggest thing that I remember was just like sitting down and drawing and working on a drawing for 6 to 8 hours. A lot of people don't realize, like a lot of people sometimes say like, hey man, draw me something. Like sure, and sometimes when people do it with ease, it's because they've put the hours and hours and hours of like craftsmanship and work on something.
If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment about the episode. And if you're watching on Spotify or listening on a traditional podcast platform, please follow, rate us 5 stars, and leave a review if you would be so kind. Thank you. Welcome to the Way to Know You podcast, Season 2, Episode 19. My name is Nick Rounds, and I will be your host. My next guest is an animation professional, a toy maker, and a storyteller. He's designed stunning pop culture collectible vinyl toys, worked on amazing animated shows such as Adventure Time and Regular Show, and has written a children's book that would make even LeVar Burton proud. But don't take my word for it. When he's not busy busting ghosts as the president of the Ecuadorian Ghost Corps, he's rubbing elbows with famous directors and kicking the Wolfman in the nards. Chogrin, wait, I know you. How are you today?
Oh, good, man. That was quite an introduction. Thank you. Wow. You literally summarized the last 10 years of my life. It's great. No, that's awesome, man. Thank you for having me on the show. Before we start, I just want to say, like, it was so cool. Like, I saw that you had Tsunami Bomb.
Emily Whitehurst, yeah.
Recently, and I don't want to say like that I knew their like discography like completely, but I just remember really loving Take the Reins, I think it was called. I just love that song, and I know she did like a collab at one point with Mike Herrera from MXPX.
Yep.
But yeah, that was super cool. Like I hadn't seen her in a while, so it was like a nice surprise. I was like, oh, awesome, to see her. But yeah.
Yeah, she was so much fun to interview. Yeah, she's still active as a singer in their solo group, Survival Guide. But cool. She's on Twitch all the time, actually. And if you join her Twitch, like she will do like acoustic or bass versions of old Tsunami Bomb songs, including "Take the Reins."
Yes, yeah, check that out. That's awesome. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah,
I love the cross pollination of guests. I'm super into it.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
Awesome. But let's talk about you, sir. Let's talk about all the cool stuff that you've been doing. So to set some context for people about like really what informs your art style and your work, you were full-time in animation as your day job. I won't say where, but you're a bit of a scholar when it comes to animation and animation styles. Yeah. And to set some context about your personal style and what inspires you, here's a term that I didn't really know until I started doing research on you, which is what is rubber hose animation, and where have people seen it before?
Yeah, rubber hose animation. Well, I will start where people know it now. People, if you've watched or played Cuphead, that's basically what rubber hose animation is. It's a style that was developed like in the 1920s, going into the 30s, and a little bit into the 40s. All the early Mickey Mouse cartoons, Popeye cartoons, Betty Boop, all the Fleischer animation of Iwerks, and even the early Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, or was it Merry Melodies? All that stuff is like kind of sort of like that rubber hose style, which rubber hose literally means like the limbs of the characters look like they're like little hoses, and their arms can do stuff. Like I always, working in Adventure Time, I'd always call Adventure Time neo rubber hose movement, because it's literally was kind of taking a lot of like kind of those elements of like, you know, the characters like with hose, like, you know, or sausage like appendages, and, you know, kind of like you know, and they move around, and I think it allows for a lot more expression in a character. And so I kind of, that's a style that has a huge influence on me. But I also yeah, there you go. Cuphead. I was fortunate. I had the awesome opportunity because I had worked with this company called the Yeti. I had done a couple of shirts with them, and then they actually got the official license for Cuphead, and I was able to one of the first people to do official merch when the game came out. So that was pretty rad. And then I just had a couple of friends of mine that worked on the new show on Netflix, and that show is absolutely. Can we swear?
Oh, please do. You can swear as much as
Yeah,
you want.
yeah, the show is absolutely fucking gorgeous. So
There you go.
and from what I know is that, because I was like, oh, there's only like 15 episodes, but I think there's tons more coming throughout the year. So and it's cool because that show is really a love letter to Rubber Hose, because they even use the stereo optical effect that the old Popeye cartoons used, like on the Sinbad color ones, where like they're literally shooting 3D backgrounds with like the cell animation in front of it, and like moving the characters with it. So it's just really neat to see like that kind of process being brought back and put like in a modern day, and it just looks like mwah, you know, like it just looks gorgeous. I mean, if you watch those old Popeye cartoons or any of those, you know, if they were shot on film, and if they're cleaned up really, I mean, they still like hold up to today. I mean, they just still have that majesty, that magic. Like I just watched the other day. I mean, it's not an animation, but there's a lot of special effects and things. As The Wizard of Oz, it's still mind blowing to see that movie and how vibrant it is. So, anyways, yeah, Rubber Hose.
And Popeye is one of your huge influences too, right?
Yeah, Popeye. Like the thing that I always say is like it's like Popeye and Astro Boy are like, you know, are kind of like my two big influences. So when people say like, you know, my style looks like Popeye and Astro Boy had a baby, it's, you know, I totally take it as a compliment, because I mean, not to get into my stuff, but like, I mean,
you can get into your stuff. You can use props, sir.
So you can see, here's an example, like here's Silent Bob from like the Mallrats toys are going to be coming out later this year from UVD Toys. But you can see like this, like the Popeye thing is like, for me, is starts out like thin, and then like, even though the Popeye arms kind of had like a bulging, like, you know, like almost look like an oval, like in his forearm,
Right.
I kind of sort of like, my translation of that is to start from like thin to thick, you know, and I've applied that not just on these, but on other toys that I've done. Like, for example, here's the Guru del Toro. The Guru del Toro will start from thin to thick, and then thin to thick in all the arms. And that's even in my newest Guru, you know, which is Kevin. It's the same process.
That's
so,
the Guru Askew Readable Edition.
Yeah, Guru's Q Readable Edition that just came out, available through Unruly Industries or Sideshow Collectibles, and it's got his little J puff there. So
his J joint, yeah,
his J joint, which a lot of people are calling it his J sperm. So whatever you want it to be. You know?
I don't know how I feel about that one, but sure.
It works. It works. I mean, the relationship they have, you know, it's fine.
Well, they're hetero life mates. So
That's right. Yeah, I love that they went even further and Silent and Reboot, and they kind of were like, oh, okay, so they do mess around. That's pretty funny.
There's no shame. It's 2022. Just let it, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
Just good friends be friends.
That's right. Exactly.
So going back to Popeye, so what specifically, when you were a kid, like what appealed to you about Popeye, and what still inspires you about Popeye when you go back and watch some of those episodes and movies?
That's a cool question. Like for me, Popeye growing up represented like first of all, it was like one of those cool cartoon, the classic cartoons that you could watch over and over again. But then it had a more of a significance in the fact that my grandfather was in I'm from Ecuador, so my grandfather was actually a war hero. He was part of the Ecuadorian Navy, and he fought in this
Oh,
like
wow.
I think it's like the one battle that Ecuador is known for. Like it happened in 1941, where it was literally a territory battle between Ecuador and Peru. I always say that Ecuador is kind of like the Poland of South America. Every other country around it like slowly took pieces away from it, and it's the smallest country. We're literally the runt of South America. But what's beautiful about Ecuador is because it's on the equator, it's almost kind of has like sometimes like that California effect where you travel 4 hours and there's snow. You travel another couple hours, you're in the beach, and so it has all those different like ongoing like different weathers and stuff like that. So it's a beautiful, beautiful country. I'm super proud to be from there. But anyways, my grandfather was not a sailor in the Marines. So yeah, technically, I guess you could say a sailor. So he kind of even looked like Popeye. He had like this like kind of nose, and like, he was kind of rugged. So I always like kind of associated my grandfather with Popeye. So when I in 2014, it was the 85th anniversary of Popeye, and I think they had plans for the Gendy to do this new movie. So all these things were kind of building up, and I decided to kind of get in contact with King Features, who has the license for Popeye.
Right.
And everything I think under that was created by E.C. Segar, who created Thimble Theater, and out of Thimble Theater came Popeye. But yeah, it's funny because I used to kind of like watch when they released those Popeye DVDs, and there was a great collections too, like especially all the stuff that was done by the Fleischer brothers, because then it was Paramount, but even the Paramount stuff is beautiful. But the Fleischer stuff I consider kind of like the essential Popeye. So I would watch those. Like I used to work. I used to work in Trenton. I used to like go from Philly to Trenton every day, and then like the train ride was like 4 hours. So it's so funny just like seeing those shorts. And I was watching them then later on in college as more aesthetically, like I was studying them like to like kind of sort of like, as inspiration for my style. So Popeye's kind of been like in a roller coaster, like from like, having a personal significance to this, and then being able to actually get the official license, and do it. It's been insane. It's been so the last couple of years, like honestly, it's one of those things where sometimes like when I do have moments to breathe, I realize I was like, holy crap, like that's insane. It's like I've done a lot of things, but I never try to like rest on my laurels for too long. I just kind of sort of keep going, and try not to look back too much. But I definitely like I'm definitely honored to have been able to like add a little tiny bit of like to Popeye history. So yeah, in 2014 I got to do this really cool show, and then as part of the show I did a little like plaque, or a plaque that I put in front of the show before everybody got in. I dedicated the show to my grandfather, E.C. Segar, and oh man, I'm gonna feel terrible. The voice of Popeye for a long time. I don't remember. I don't
Oh, I
know
can
his
look it up.
Yeah, I don't know his name offhand right now, but so I dedicated to those three gentlemen. But yeah. So Popeye is kind of just like, and I also like the attitude of Popeye.
To
Popeye was a
Jack
sorry, go ahead.
Mercer.
Jack Mercer, yes. So yeah, I just like the attitude of Popeye because Popeye was kind of sort of technically the first superhero, is like pre-Superman, kind of like the strong man, like kind of sort of like always fighting the bully, which a lot of the episodes it was Bluto. So
Didn't the Fleischer brothers work on Superman as well?
they did, which was
Yeah.
and they did. I think there was a short where I don't think they interacted, but I think Popeye actually wears the Superman costume for a couple of seconds. So yeah, it's one of those things that's just embedded in my DNA. And then growing up in South America, we were constantly fed a nice diet of Japanese animation and live action shows. So when I moved to the States, and Power Rangers and Dragon Ball Z were popular, and everybody was going ape shit, I was like, I've already seen all this stuff, like. But I'm like, but I'll jump in the bandwagon. It's cool. It's like it's in my, like I said, it's in my DNA. So, so I remember when I went to school, and they told, like, one of the things that I had these really cool mentors when I had my internship at Cartoon Network, as I was going to school, Bob McKnight and Ken Boyer, who are kind of like these old school animator guys who worked at Warner Brothers, Disney. Those are the guys, like, these are the guys that they call, like, when they want, like, they want the characters to look on model, or they want, like, the classic characters drawn.
Right.
And they kind of sort of, the best piece of advice they told me was like, who are the people that, like, you feel like, you want to not necessarily draw like, but are your biggest influences. And they told me, like, make a list of all the people that kind of like influenced you. And then I kind of sort of like went, like, Popeye, like the different cartoons that I grew up with. And through that, I kind of just like, mixed all those things together. And, even Jorge was a kind of a big, that was the summer of 2006. A friend of mine, Eric Gonzalez, who is an awesome artist on his own. He's the one that introduced me to Jorge's stuff. He showed me the pilot to El Tigre. So seeing Jorge's stuff was also kind of like a revelation. So he's definitely been another huge influence in my style, because he's also influenced by all those other things as well, like Popeye and anime and all that stuff, because he grew up in Mexico, which is not that far from, we basically were fed almost the same pop culture. So
yeah. For context, for the people who are listening, we're talking about Jorge Gutierrez,
yes,
who directed The Book of Life, and then also most recently on Netflix, Maya and the Three, which is an amazing limited series. Highly recommend.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
But yeah, Jorge's work is so awesome. I mean, the thing that really just was stunned, not to derail into Jorge, but I guess we're
no, let's derail to Jorge, please. He's somebody that I'm lucky enough to consider a friend and also a mentor at the same time. And I've also been lucky enough he's the producer on my short film that I'm doing.
That's awesome.
Lucky Brave Sunshine. Yeah. That'll be coming out later in the year, but I'll maybe we can include a link to the teaser somewhere
absolutely. Yep.
Cool.
I will absolutely do that. Yeah, the thing that really was stunning for me, because like I love that he always sneaks in lucha libre into his stuff in different elements, but Maya and the Three was absolutely stunning because he's shoving so much folklorico and also just amazing legends and elements that, like, most people, unless you know the culture, wouldn't pick up on. But it's
making it his own too, because like he's not tying himself like to be super historically accurate. He's kind of sort of taking those elements and just like kind of putting them in a blender, and like he's not like and Maya and the Three is really cool because he's kind of sort of like paying tribute to like all the different like ancient cultures like the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayans, but not necessarily calling them that, just kind of sort of giving them like little flourishes of that. And in that way, artistically, he's freeing himself too to kind of sort of just create his own universe as well. And that to me is even more of like a, like, for lack of better words, like, just like an amazing like creative outburst. So sorry.
Absolutely. No, you're good.
Sorry to be so graphic.
It's all good. I misspoke. I didn't mean to say folklorico. I meant to say cuentos. That's what I get for being third generation.
But no, it's okay. You can say cuentos folclóricos, which is basically folk tales,
Yeah.
So you're good.
I'm third generation Mexican, which means I don't speak it very well. My grandmother makes fun of me for it, but what are you gonna do?
Hey, but at least you recognize your roots. That's cool. So
absolutely.
I always every time I just literally just did another podcast last week where it was like it was in Ecuador. So the first thing I do because I am bilingual. But the first thing, I speak more English than Spanish. So every time I go on a show that I have to speak Spanish, I apologize. It's like, please excuse my broken Spanish. So, because every once in a while I'll be like, and how do you say? And then it'll take me like a couple of seconds, but I do defend myself. Oh, pretty okay.
Yeah, I'm good on taco truck Spanish.
There you go.
I can always say con todo and just go from there. But if they ask me any other questions, like shit.
Yeah,
So,
take my money, give me the food.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. So I actually want to go back to a name drop that you had earlier, which is Iwerks, UB, and then Iwerks, Iwerks.
Yeah, man.
Who is Iwerks and why is he so significant to Disney?
Iwerks is such an unsung hero. He is literally I don't even want to say the co-creator. I almost sometimes feel he is the sole creator of Mickey Mouse. But I mean, Walt did have it was a back and forth between Walt and because that, to set it up for people that don't know, before Mickey, there was Oswald the Rabbit, who Walt and were doing shorts for Universal. Then basically Universal just kind of sort of screwed them over and was like, well, it's my character now, so we don't need you guys. So literally, it's one of the coolest stories in history. I think is like Walt basically, was heartbroken, and who wouldn't be? Like, if you think you have this character and like then it's taken away from you, he kind of sort of learned a lesson from there, and he just decided, it's like, whatever I do next, whatever character I do next, it's like I'm gonna own it. And it's gonna be mine. So I think Walt traveling to the West for the first time. I don't want to say too much because I might be getting it all wrong. But basically, what happened is, I think Walt, let's make it a mouse, and he literally made the design for Mickey Mouse. He created the original design for Mickey, and he was literally animating while he was still employed at Universal, making he was, I think, contractually obligated to work on Oswald cartoons. He was animating the first Mickey Mouse short, which I think was Plain Crazy. That was before Steamboat Willie, and
Right.
Mickey. If you look at the design, it's like I feel like it's Mickey's like purest form. Like, he doesn't even have shoes. It's just like his feet. It's like super poor Mickey Mouse. He still has his pants, his iconic pants with the two buttons in the front, but man, like, to talk, like, there's like a legend that goes around where he was like literally animating, like he was drawing 700 pages a day. So just imagine, like, Iwerks is like literally like one of those people. He's one of those like human machines. Like, he was one of those people that like would challenge himself to something, and then he would be like, once he like mastered that, he would go on to the next thing and master that. And because he was known as an animator from like the 20s to the, I think, late 30s, and then he at one point kind of quit Disney because I feel like he wasn't getting the amount of respect that he wanted, or the amount of freedom artistically. I think it was more artistic freedom, because it got to a point where like Mickey Mouse blew up, and then Walt was kind of sort of like, Walt kind of just became Walt, and started doing other projects. And didn't feel like he felt like he should have been like, like they should have been like hand in hand. So I think I don't blame him, went and made his own studios, which is, I think it was called Cinecolor. I don't know. Yeah, don't quote me on that,
I
but
can
it was.
look.
Yeah, but he made his own creations, like Flip the Frog, Willy Whopper, and he went on to create a bunch of amazing like cartoons of his own. One of my favorites is Balloon Land, which is such a creepy, beautiful little short. It's literally like, it's like this kingdom. It almost looks like a Candyland. It's like this kingdom made of balloons, and the bad guy is like this. Uh, what are those things? What are those things called where you put like pins, like things like, man, what are they called? basically the bad guy is like a guy whose face is like literally
Pincushion.
pincushion. Yeah, it's like this
Yeah.
pincushion monster, and like literally like pops like these characters to death. Like, so like Ub's stuff was always kind of sort of like always on the darker side. But I think that's kind of what made the genius at the beginning between all those shorts and things like that. So Ub eventually did, after kind of like doing his own studio, he did go back to Disney later on when and him and Walt did kind of have like, they were able to kind of put their differences aside. And Ub kind of sort of then became like the genius, like almost like the first Imagineer, because he kind of created a lot of like for example, in 101 Dalmatians, he created the Xerox effects where animators, you didn't have to like, there was, they kind of skipped the cleanup where it was just literally they would Xerox the animators actually lines. So that's why when you look at that movie, the lines look kind of rough. It's the actual, yeah, and the animators love that because like they could actually see like their lines, on the final film. So he created that. He created, I think, also that there was an attraction, and I think it might still be there, but I remember as a kid, I was at Disney World. I might have had it at Disneyland too. It was like a 360 like camera where they would go to places around the world, and they would film like the Great Wall of China or something, and then they would project it, and it's almost like you could see like all around you. So see, he did a bunch of stuff like that. He outside of Disney, I know he helped with the effects like for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, like with the not Psycho, the Birds. And he helped, like, I think he got an Oscar for like his like contributions like to like the technical part of cinema and things like that. So he was like just an absolute like genius. I think he was absolutely part of absolutely part of the reason Walt became part of his fame, and honestly, like one of the things I want to be able to do someday, if I have the opportunity, is um, to vote to have some kind of statue made of him at the parks, because especially California Adventure, there's a California Adventure shows Walt with Mickey, and like in his 20s outfit, and I feel like it would be very fitting to put up there too, because it really, that beginning really was a collaboration between them two. So
For sure.
but anyways, I love the man, and he actually even more than Popeye over the years, he's become more of an influence for me artistically to draw, because I just love his style and the way he drew characters as well. So
Absolutely. You were correct earlier about Cinecolor. I looked it
okay,
up.
cool.
And just a content warning to anybody that looks into Ub's past stuff. I mean, similar to Disney, they're not, there can be some of his backlog is racist, specifically Little Black Sambo. Like some of that stuff is super
Yeah,
problematic.
yeah.
Song of the South with Disney, like you can't avoid that. However,
anything from that time period, anything,
yeah,
like even Disney's, like you said, Song of the South is at fault of this. Like that's one of the things that I like about the Popeye cartoons, is they will slap a giant like warning label in front of it saying like some of this content like was of the time period, and it's like very racist. So I think any of those cartoons nowadays should definitely come with that. But it's I think at the time that it's not like they were trying to be. It was just like it was
right.
just that time. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's good that you say that for sure.
Yeah, I didn't want to gloss over that fact because I didn't want anybody to like look up his work and be like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah,
Because
no,
like,
and I don't want anybody to think that I'm like that's the thing that I'm focusing on. Like, oh,
for sure.
he inspires me because of that.
No.
So, so
No, that was just more of a caveat. That's all. Cool. Thank you. I mean, so the reason I really was so excited to talk to you is because you really are a scholar when it comes to this stuff. I'm blown away by two things about you. I'm blown away by your hustle, and I'm blown away by how much of a scholar you are in terms of animation and just like references. Like that's the stuff that always blows me away about, like, in addition to just you as an artist period, like you're so knowledgeable about so many different things. So
I mean, I'm knowledgeable about the stuff that I love, man. You ask me about anything else, I might be like, what? So
I mean, there's no, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's literally a library behind you, so
Yeah, I mean, like
I can only imagine it's all in your head right now.
I apologize. Yeah, I do apologize. It's very disorganized, but I know where everything is. So,
You're good.
yeah, as long as it works, you know, it's like I think it's one of those things like I've always lived in organized messes, and as long as I know where things are, it's good. But I hopefully maybe like next year I'll come back because I am actually in the middle of a remodel, and I'm gonna make this place look much cooler. And hopefully have a better camera as well. So.
All good. Um, so we've talked a lot about influences in animation, but let's start talking about you, sir. Let's talk about all the cool stuff that you've been doing. As I mentioned previously, or actually as you mentioned previously, actually, you interned at Cartoon Network in college and eventually landed
Yeah,
a full-time gig working at Adventure Time and later regular show.
yeah.
You kind of touched on like your mentors having you kind of list out the things that the cartoons that really inspired you, but were there any other like huge lessons that you learned during that specific period of time?
Yes, I did actually. So not only did I learn to become a better artist, because I was already kind of going through art school. I think I was going into my senior year. So I had already gone through my junior year. I actually almost quit art school after my sophomore year because like the first 2 years of art school, I mean, it depends from school to school, but freshman year is kind of like boot camp a little bit. They really, actually, freshman year was really cool because they kind of strip you down. Like whatever you learned from high school art class, they just like throw that away, and we're gonna like we're gonna restart. We're gonna start from the beginning, and like like the biggest thing that I remember was just like sitting down and drawing and working on a drawing for 6 to 8 hours. A lot of people don't realize, like a lot of people sometimes say like, hey man, draw me something. Like sure, and sometimes when people do it with ease, it's because they've put the hours and hours and hours of like craftsmanship and work on something, but still a good design still takes time. Anyways, I'm going off a tangent. Your question was, oh, what did I learn? So essentially I the reason I was saying that is because I wanted to shout out a teacher that I had that kind of sort of saved me and kept me in art school. And because I stayed in art school, I was able to do my internship at Cartoon Network, which then kind of sort of put me where I am today. Because if it wasn't honest, I honestly think if it wasn't for the internship that I had at Cartoon Network, I wouldn't, none. I mean, I would have maybe found a way to get to the animation industry, but it definitely helped open doors. So this one teacher that I had, Brian Biggs, who is an awesome illustrator and comic book artist on his own. I had him. He was kind of sort of like the one teacher that I had in my junior year. Him and Christian Patchell were like the teachers that kind of sort of like, oh, you can. It was more kind of like you go through the 2 years of art school, like freshman and sophomore year, where you kind of sort of like learn the rules and the basics, and then you kind of sort of junior and senior year, you kind of start focusing on the more of the things that you want to do. Like for me, it was like always animation, comics, illustration, doing covers, things like that. So because of those teachers and because of this awesome junior year that I had, I was able to then apply for the internship at Cartoon Network. That summer I actually applied for everything. I applied for like all the dream companies that I wanted to work for, like Pixar, Lucasfilm, Nickelodeon. But I always had a soft spot for Cartoon Network. I remember growing up in the 90s, and I remember we were like, I think it was like Time Warner, or is it Turner? Anyways, it was just cool
Yeah.
to have a place where you could watch Tom and Jerry, the Flintstones, all the Hanna-Barbera and WB stuff like together, you know. So for me, it was kind of a big deal. I was like, oh shit, and then not to mention that I also kind of sort of growing up in that age of like Craig McCracken and Gendy Tartakovsky, who were kind of sort of like the Renaissance. They were like they were the first generation of Cartoon Network, of the new cartoons, of like the what a cartoon time period. So when I got that internship, it was absolutely mind blowing because it was in 2006. So Gendy, I think, was just finishing. I think they were just off the Clone Wars because I think he had done Samurai Jack and then he went on to do the Clone Wars. So I think there were
Mhm.
remnants of maybe some of the Clone Wars stuff. Maybe not. No, wait. All right, now I'm like, I I remember I remember there was I remember for those who are listening and maybe visited Cartoon Network studios like in the early 2000s, Gendy was such a big deal in that place that there was literally they had like this like one of the things that they had hanging up was like this Gendy suit. It was like and I think somebody made it just like as a joke, but like they had it like it was part of the studio when you walked in, because that's how big of a powerhouse Gendy was in the studio. But then I do remember when I had my internship there, Craig McCracken was still there, and Foster's was still being worked on. I think they were on their last season, but the show that I got to intern on was Class of 3000, which another huge influence there in the way that, for me, how I draw today was the character designer on that show, David Coleman, was was hugely referencing Al Hirschfeld, who is this cartoonist, this famous cartoonist who would like draw all the celebrities in Hollywood and stuff. Like if you look at his stuff, it's absolutely like his style is so unique, but it's also very like all his work is like, the best way I can describe it is like curves. Everything that he does is very curvy, and it kind of sort of falls in that sort of rubber hose a little bit, but it has an elegance to it. If you want to if you want to learn about the guy, there's a great documentary on him called it's going to sound like the movie The Lion King, but it's literally The Line, like Line, The Lion King, and that's a documentary on him, Al Hirschfeld. So that style of that show was very influenced by him. So that show kind of sort of had like a rubber hose quality to it. So that was also a huge influence. And in that show, I also met those two mentors that I previously said, Bob McKnight and Ken Boyer, and sort of from there, like that summer, that internship was like this big like boiling pot of like an explosion. And I remember then that summer coming off of that and then going back to school as a senior, like walking around like I was like hot shit, like because I was like I don't need school, I don't need this shit. Like I'm gonna get a fucking job like right like I'm like I don't even there was a part there's actually there was a moment because I think somebody had quit and I was like right after my internship and they actually offered me a job at Cartoon Network. So I could have literally started my career way earlier, but I'm glad that I didn't, and I'm glad that I finished school because I found out then that show only lasted I think 6 more months, and Cartoon Network went through that transition of live action. So there was like no cartoons. I think and it would take me almost 2 years after I graduated from college to go then back to Cartoon Network. And it was at the best time because it was kind of sort of what I call the second renaissance of Cartoon Network, which was Adventure Time, regular show, and
Yeah.
and even Steven, out of that came Steven Universe, Rebecca's Steven Universe. So it was one of those things where I'm just kind of like, I'm glad that I went back, finished school, and it was also good because too, like, just to finish school, just to say you finished something, and I also did learn a lot that year as well. So that's the best thing I can tell anybody that wants to go into any kind of career is do an internship while you're in school. It's literally you're setting yourself like you're planting the seeds for your future career. One of the Another thing I should say that was really cool while I was working there is I found the position that I currently am doing in animation, which is called character cleanup, which in Kevin Smith terms or in comic terms is the inker or the tracer. Um, um,
Nice
so
chasing your reference.
yes, that's right. But you know what? For me, I was like thinking that's the perfect job for me to be able to do, and then also be able to work on on my stuff as well. Like kind of like be working in the industry, but then also like have the time to then work on my own things as well, because there is an art to inking things, because you're always like even though you have the rough sketch of somebody's drawing in front of you, you're always plussing it, you're always kind of adding little things here and there, or finishing the drawing and stuff like that. I remember like on regular show was the first time that I really On Adventure Time, I was doing more production things. Like I kind of just got, I knew I was such a huge fan of the pilot that the Nickelodeon, was, they were, I don't want to say dumb enough, but Nickelodeon literally had the opportunity, I think, to have Adventure Time, and then like Penn went over and made it with Cartoon Network. So and the rest is history. But I was such a huge fan of the pilot that like I didn't even care if they had like artist positions available. I just like the moment they said like there was a production assistant a position available, I took it. So and ironically, no, I shouldn't say ironically, but it was really cool. Coincidentally, it was really cool because the crew that I worked with on Adventure Time was the same crew that I worked with when I was interning on Class of 3000. So that was part of the reason why. Yeah, that was part of the reason why it kind of worked out, because I was that annoying kid that like after after my internship, I would email everybody that I met that summer, like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Hey, I'm working on this. I'm working on that. And I just literally did that like for like 2 years. And I think somebody was just like, oh my God, like maybe like get this kid to shut up, we'll finally give him a job. So, and it was actually the great time because I had just been let go. I was working for during that transition period when I finished school. I actually did kind of go through a slump. I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to find work right out of school. I worked at a design company for 2 years, like doing like toy and candy packaging. So that was actually a very that also really added to what I do today. Is like I worked with these amazing designers that were like had much more experience than me, and they taught me what they knew. Like my friend Peter Winsowski and Justin Gray, those guys really like taught me hotkeys like in Illustrator and Photoshop, because beforehand in school I was like the guy that went to menu, scroll down, select, and then like when I went those 2 years at working at a design company where like it was like this great like just kind of sort of like I became like I like to say like I got an upgrade, because it was just like then like I was just like da, 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 with my hand like on the side, on the keyboard. And it's funny because like that then you don't know how that added to the work I would do later, and then to the work I would do in animation. So it made me like, it enhanced my skills and my abilities. Anyways, I went on a tangent again.
No, it's good. It's good.
But yeah. Anyways, yeah. So I learned, when I had my internship, I learned about this position, and the position that I happened to that I also leaned into it was because it was done in vector, and I was already kind of like leaning towards like vector stuff like in school. Like I really kind of grew to love Illustrator because of the way that I drew curves and lines. I really loved the control that vector, that you could really kind of create your own brushes and the pristine look of it. Like you could. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to things, so I really love that clean line. And the other plus about vector, that the thing that I would hate sometimes about Photoshop, is that in Photoshop at some point things start getting pixelated, and in vector it never pixelates. You can literally do something that small and then stretch it like to a billboard side and it will not pixelate. So anyways, yes, there we go.
Awesome. So to round out the conversation in terms of like what we started out talking, because you mentioned Emily Whitehurst earlier, she's actually a huge fan of Adventure Time, and she a song you can request for her is "Daddy, Why'd You Eat My Fries" by Marceline the Vampire.
Nice.
She sings that on Twitch as well.
I can see her doing that really well. Yeah. That was like, I think that was from season one or two, and I just remember when Rebecca wrote that song. Like it was now thinking about it, it's kind of funny that you say that, because like I haven't thought about those years in a while, but I definitely have. I look back at them with fondness because I was the guy, because when I moved out here I didn't have really anybody around, so I would literally live at the studio. Like I would leave that studio sometimes at 11 or 12, and honestly at first it was because I couldn't afford internet or I didn't want to pay for internet, so I would just stay at the studio and just work on my own stuff. But one of the cool things about that was you could hear like the storyboard artists like working on stuff till late. And one of the people that, it's funny enough because I had met Rebecca at an indie comic book festival a couple of years, like a year or two back, SPX or Mocha, and I think it was New York. And she had come out with a comic book. I think it was like a pug, like Space Adventures. I don't know the name of it, but I remember like getting it and we interacted, and then we kind of recognized each other because she must have come like 2 weeks after I moved out to LA. So we kind of sort of had like a little bit of that bond at the beginning. So it was really cool to see her trajectory from like, a storyboard artist in Adventure Time to late, like I think 2 or 3 years later, doing her own Steven Universe. But what was cool is like hearing that song like literally getting developed, like her like just playing, and like that was really cool. So that's actually something that I didn't even think about, and then you just talking about it, it was just like, that's awesome. I was there to like hear and witness like some of those things like literally being made. So
yeah, that's the magic of being behind the scenes or on the ground floor, that kind of stuff. And to
yeah.
context of the listeners and or watchers, we're talking about Rebecca Sugar.
Yep. Rebecca
name.
Sugar. Yeah,
Awesome.
she's a beautiful human being.
As are you, sir.
Oh, thank you. as are you, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. Since we're doling out compliments, thank you so much. So you and I are both huge toy nerds. You've been Jay Gladfelter, I interviewed him as well. And
Yeah.
you've been on Jay's show, Toy Geeks.
Yep.
And you're a toy maker yourself, and being a toy maker, especially if you grew up collecting toys, must feel like a very special thing to you. And
it's weird. It's weird. It's like being a father in a weird way. It's like seeing your little creations come to life. Yeah, I think it's an extension of being an artist, because like the moment you put something on paper, you're like, wow, I created this. It's like almost like the Frankenstein effect, only that you don't abandon your creation.
Right. And you already brought it up literally and figuratively. You brought up your Guru del Toro figure. And through that process, not only did you meet Guillermo del Toro, but you also met Kevin Smith, because you made
it's funny because like I always say that jokingly, I've had a love affair with Guillermo stuff since like Blade 2. And which is now 20 years old. So I've loved Guillermo stuff for 20 years now. And coincidentally enough, Guillermo was the one that led me to fall in love with Mike Mignola and Hellboy. So, and I had to, when I did this, I had to put like a little Hellboy hand, here, the hand of doom. And Guillermo's version is always very, like, it stands out because, Guillermo put like those little swirls in it. It's a little bit different than Mike's, but I did this Guru del Toro as I started doing these like series of Guillermo art shows, and then I did like this really I had done one in 2013 that was like kind of on the smaller scale, but then I did this really big one for Gallery 1988 in 2015, where I actually had these people that I met through what's that convention, Monsterpalooza. They it was basically this effects company, Figment. They're called Figment Foundry, and we did it up, man. Like I asked them, like, would you guys be able to do like a faux, like fake walls, but like in the Crimson Peak style, because Crimson Peak was a new movie that was coming out. So they actually, for people that remember that show in 2015, like those arches weren't part of the gallery. Like those were like custom made for that show. And I can talk about it now, but I remember the gallery at the time, and I had curated shows for them before. Like I had done some pretty big shows, but this is the first time we were like decorating inside. And I just remember like the gallery owners and the gallery workers, while they were installing the arches inside the gallery, like their faces in horror as we were like scraping the wall and all this stuff. So they were like, I think they were part of it. They're like, man, I hope they're probably in the back of their heads, they're thinking like, I hope this show does well. I hope it's worth it. So, and then, funny enough, then like, we of course like made it look pretty and everything like that. And most of the artwork covered the walls anyway. And the show ended up doing really well. And one of the pieces I did for the show was basically this. And I had done the drawing, I designed it, which is inspired vaguely. I had done like sort of like this design without the arms like this. Like I had drawn this design, and then I was kind of sort of like I was going to do an arm with a tentacle and another arm with a hand of doom. So I had just done like him like with. I knew I wanted to do some kind of Guillermo like type toy or statue, and then I looked at the Kronos device from his movie from 1993, his first theatrical movie, and that little device has like 6 arms, so it's like a little bug. And then another friend of mine said like, like had suggested like, well, you should do it like a deity. So I looked at, so that those kind of ideas combined, and then I kind of sort of sketched out, this. And yeah, and Guillermo bought the original one. It was sculpted by my friend Taylor Brown, who's part of Figment Foundry. Yeah, there you go. And that started a collaboration between me and her, because now she sculpts most of my big projects. So what I usually do is I'll just do the front and back design, and then do a turnaround, and give her as much information. It's literally like so cool, because like it's like seeing my drawings come to life in 3D. So she sculpted this, and then Guillermo bought the original. And then a couple years later, from doing Designer Con, I hooked up. I'm one of those people that will just like constantly be pitching, constantly be like, hey, like let's collaborate, let's do this, let's do that. And from that, like a friend of mine, David Igo, that worked at Sideshow Collectibles, I had heard that there was like a vinyl. They were starting kind of like a vinyl toy, like division. So I just like out of the blue, I just like, no, I shouldn't say out of the blue. Just coincidentally, I was like, oh, this would be a cool idea to do, because it's already made, it's already sculpted. So it worked out, and Guillermo also happens to have a good relationship with Sideshow. They've done like statues of Hellboy and Pacific Rim over the years. And having the relationship that I had with Guillermo at that point, I literally just said, hey, is it okay? Can I have your permission to make it into a toy? And it was like, like he's like it's fine by me. He's like, so it's so funny, because like the original one that he has at Bleak House, at his house, is among the collection of his collection of Ray Harryhausen. So for me, like
Oh wow.
it's a huge honor, because I know he loves Harryhausen. So so now it's so cool that that one off for the show, and the one for the show was a little bit smaller, the one that Guillermo has. So this one's like slightly bigger. And I don't want to say everybody can own it, because it is limited to only 400, and I believe right now it's almost sold out. So if you're a Guillermo fan and you want to put this in your little altar, Guillermo altar, get it while you can. And I'm not trying to be a salesman. I'm like just saying, like, I actually might have to get a couple of extra more, because I'm like, oh crap, like they're almost gone. This is
Yeah,
one of the
because
cool. This is one of the coolest things too, is to have my name on it. So, but yeah,
so right. Yeah, there's still a couple left up on Sideshow's site under Unruly Industries, and it is about to sell out for sure.
yeah,
And you also have a print of your Guru Askew, a print of
yeah,
that as well. You can now purchase the readable edition, and then the flocked green version is coming out soon, as
yep.
well as the regular black and white colorway that's an homage to Clerks.
Yeah. And this is the readable. I wanna say here something, that because a lot of people have been asking me, is since this is removable, this is the only thing that's removable on this figure. What's cool about this one, and the one that you can't really do on this one, is because this one I kind of sort of did like more in-house with a sculptor at Sideshow Studios. Is what's cool is like a lot of the hands and things are actually articulated, so they can actually, like, you can shift them around and move them how you want. um, that being said, for this one, since it's removable, the trick, because people have been saying like this keeps falling off, what you have to do is you gotta take this hand, you got to slightly move it up, like tilt it up a little bit, and you'll actually find between the two fingers there's a slot where it actually fits in beautifully and it stays in place. So
it's a good tip for anybody who wants to purchase that.
Yep. Because I've seen a lot of people that just like, so they're just like, F it, I'm just gonna do this. Like, which, hey, I'm not gonna tell you how to display your figure. You do you. But I'm just saying, like, if you want to like display it like how it is in the artwork, it's like that. So and yeah, and I should say, like, with the Guillermo one, like, these are a little bit different because Guillermo is more like fantasy, so the arms are kind of sort of like transforming into the things like that he likes. And then with Kevin, because his Kevin stuff is more grounded and based on reality, I knew it kind of had to do like a little bit more realistic. So like it's like the clerk script, the bong saber, the microphone for podcasts, movies, because of the movies franchise. I had to do a reference to weed, and I was thinking, like, what better? We already kind of have the bong saber, but like I know that's also his love for Star Wars and Blunt Man.
Right.
And then I knew I had to incorporate Jay somehow, so that's why the little puff from the joint coming out is like has Jay's face on it. And then like the megaphone for directing. The megaphone, you can't really read it, but you'll see it in the print version. It has like curse, like what's the word, like almost like what when they do in comics for cursing, it has
yeah.
But I did like, and what I did is like I used the hashtag mark, which on the keyboard is 3, and then I used the end, the sign for and then and that's 7. So for anybody that knows Kevin Smith, it's like the number 37. It's like a secret little Easter egg in there. And of course, then like he's got the Blunt Man hat, and then on the back he's got the Silent Bob. And the Silent Bob pin, and then the Buddy Christ heart in the front. So I that was like the thing that I was the most proud of, is to put the heart there, because I was thinking like that's going to be so cool, not just because of the Buddy Christ, but because he survived the heart attack. So his I don't know. I'm really proud of this one, I'm really proud of that. It fell down. I'm really proud of this one too. So yeah, man, and I'm hoping to round out the trilogy. The next one that I have in mind is going to be crazy. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
You name dropped Ray Harryhausen, who's famous for Clash of the Titans, and the day that we're recording this, which is it just happens to be Willis O'Brien Day as well.
Whoa! Yeah. He responsible for King Kong.
Who created King Kong, which I'm wearing the shirt of today.
Cool.
And Ray Harryhausen was a protege of Willis. What's funny? I was at Disneyland and I was on a Haunted Mansion. I was wearing this shirt, my King Kong shirt, and just the guy who was holding the door of the Haunted Mansion, he's like, "Hey, do you know who the animator is?" I'm like, "Yes, Willis O'Brien." He's like, and then we just started having a conversation. And the thing I love about Disney, it doesn't matter if it's somebody like a cast member or anybody that works for corporate. Disney attracts the biggest nerds.
I literally went the other was it last week? Yeah, I went last week, and I was wearing my Ghostbusters 2 shirt. And somebody just like, called it out. They were like, "Wow, it's been a while since I've seen a Ghostbusters 2 shirt." I'm like, "Yeah, man, gotta represent." Since it didn't get any love in Ghostbusters Afterlife. So, sorry, that's my Ghostbusters fan coming out. So, by the way, I love Ghostbusters Afterlife, but the best way that I've been telling everybody, because I have a love-hate relationship with that movie, because like sometimes like, and rest in peace, Ivan Reitman. I love the Ghostbuster franchise and everything like that, and I love Jason and love his movies. But my one thing, it's every time I watch that movie, it's kind of like she loves me not. Like sometimes I just love and I'm bawling in that movie, and then sometimes I'm nitpicking it but I think the best way I can review that movie is it's a great sequel to Ghostbusters 1. It's not so much a great sequel to Ghostbusters 2. So or continuation. So I think if you watch Ghostbusters 1 and then watch Afterlife, perfect. But if you want to, like, if you're a Ghostbusters 2 fan like I am, and I'm just kind of like, "Hey man, where's the beef?" So
We didn't need another reference to He-Man. We need to see what happens with Oscar since he is canon. We have to, see Rick Moranis again, don the proton pack. There's so many like things that
and I
are kind
mean
of left on the table.
and I mean the 2009 game like was brilliant. Like even though
Oh yeah,
that game is not canon, what they did with the Ecto was brilliant because they literally like they brought back the original logo, but they kept aspects of Ecto 1A on the car. Like they kept the hazard stripes. Like that's one of the things that bugged the shit out of me as like from a design point of view. I'm like, why? I mean, even though the Ecto had new things like the sliding door and all that stuff like that, why would it look exactly like the first movie if they redid it? They added all this stuff in the second movie and then just revert back to that first one. For me, like it just should have like if you were gonna do if I have no problem reverting back to like like, the designer point of view. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like the Ghostbusters when the Ghostbusters 2 logo was like a promotional thing and then they reverted back to the original logo. That's totally fine. I love the original logo better anyway, but I have a soft spot for it too. But the fact that the Ecto had no like, remnants of Ecto 1A really it just like I was just kind of like and then like come on Jason, like you were in the effing movie. Like,
and you made
so
a little figure of him, right? Too, as
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah. We did a Ghostbusters show, and I knew. Well, and Jason, I want to take this opportunity, like, to say, like, thank you for stopping by the show, and he was super nice. He stopped by. He bought those figures of himself, and that we did of him and his sister, because his sister Catherine cameos in the movie too as the girl with a puppy. So, but yeah, man, that's my only gripe. I will say it is the perfect movie. I understand why he did what he did because it is the perfect kind of like neutral or not neutral. It's a great primer movie to then set up future sequels because
yeah,
a lot of people were complaining like, oh, like it didn't start like the other movies. And then if you think about it, the whole movie is a setup because then at the ending it does like it starts kind of like the other movies, and it's like literally like the whole movie is a setup for then the future adventures. So it is actually there's a lot of parts that I'm just kind of like it's genius. It's like chef's kiss.
yeah,
So
yeah. I'm really excited to see where it goes. Just because I love that Winston is like the Nick Fury of the Ghostbusters now, more or less. Spoilers.
yes,
Um,
yes, and I want to see and like I could care less if Bill Murray comes back because he's always been the holdout, and I've had a love hate relationship with Bill Murray over the years. I love him, and he's an amazing actor. But if he doesn't come back, I'm fine as long as Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd are in it. Good, I'm good. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was funny because they said in the movie they said that Ray was the heart of the Ghostbusters, but I mean, in a lot of ways, Dan Aykroyd has always been the heart of the Ghostbusters, no matter what.
What
Um,
okay, so I don't want to get in a tangent again, but that was my other biggest problem with the movie. It's just like I understand like they wanted to kind of sort of like they made the whole thing like as a like the movie as a kind of like Reitman legacy, but the Ghostbusters has always been Dan Aykroyd's kind of legacy. Dan Aykroyd, I've always viewed Dan Aykroyd as the George Lucas like of like Ghostbusters, and I get it. Like I know that Ivan and Harold and all those guys they kind of all brainstormed for the first movie because Dan's first idea was like in the future, and at the time it was like batshit crazy for them to make it like budget wise, but I just wish that Dan would have been a little bit more incorporated into the story, like because a lot of the kooky, crazy ideas from 1 and 2 is all Dan, and
yeah,
then Harold was the one that kind of took Dan's stuff and kind of grounded it and like made the characters more like relatable and stuff like that. So I hope moving forward. They kind of sort of like because even in the equipment stuff, I feel like Dan would have added some cool equipment stuff, like the fact that Egon built even though it's a cool shot and it's awesome, like the fact that Egon built all these little mini traps like didn't make any sense to me. Like I think like that was another cool thing that the Ghostbusters video game did. Like the Ecto had a giant fucking ghost trap on the top of it, and,
yeah,
I was kind of expecting something like that, and I understand like why they had to write some things. I think some of the stuff didn't. It just for me as a person that has like love the characters and stuff like that. I just don't feel like Ray and Egon were like this, and I just don't feel like Ray would have let Egon like let would have let go of him like that quickly, you know. Like
Yeah.
I understand why Egon did what he did, like basically because, you know, like you're trying to save the world, and he kind of sort of like was like, well, nobody's gonna believe me, F this, I'm gonna leave, you know. But I just like, there were some things I feel like the original characters should have been incorporated more into the movie. You know, like you know, and even Janine, you know, I know we had like those, anyways. Yeah, I could I could do a whole video. I could do a whole
I
video
said that.
about it.
I
Yeah,
believe you, sir. Yeah, I said the
yeah,
magic
yeah,
word. To build on the ghost trap thing, you know, because the way that they interpret Gozer is that they need Vince Clortho
yeah.
uh,
They,
and
they
then and
Zool,
in
Zool,
order
yeah,
to actually make the whole of but the way I interpret it is that like similar to like a possession of
yeah,
like Legion or whatever, where it's like multiple demons inside of a body, not to get too crazy.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I saw that as they're literally pulling apart Gozer from
different
itself, so
parts.
that yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. You're right. You're right. That is a really good point. I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful shot, and I mean, and the acting in the movie is absolutely great. Like that's actually my favorite thing that I always take away from the movie is the new characters. It's like, especially Phoebe. I mean,
oh,
like,
Phoebe was so fantastic.
yeah, yeah. When that toy came out of her, and spoilers, Egon's ghost, like that was one of the most like beautiful moments. I was just like, I wanted her action figure so badly, like, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things that Jason Reitman did in the movie is that character. And I even loved Carrie Coon, because Carrie Coon really
Oh
grounds
yeah,
the movie. You're like, everybody's like, she's kind of an asshole mom, but like, yeah, she's kind of an asshole for a reason though. So
yeah.
like, I mean,
I
like
mean that's a
she's
mark of
re-
a good character as well.
yeah,
So
she's relatable. Like, yeah, she hasn't had like the best, like, you know, she's kind of had all these like shit turns in her life. Like, who wouldn't be kind of like, you know, a sour puss a little bit. So, you know,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
Anyways,
thank you for the Ghostbusters tangent, because I mean Ghostbusters is super important to me as well, and yeah,
yeah, same here, same here. And I don't want anybody to think that like I don't like I love the new movie. I absolutely love it. But I'm the guy, like, you talk to me about Star Wars, and I feel Rise of Skywalker is kind of like sort of like shit the bed a little bit too. And I love and I love that sequel trilogy. I love it. Like, I know a lot of people hate that sequel trilogy. I fucking love it, because like for me, Kylo Ren is one of the most interesting characters that Star Wars has put on screen. Like, I mean, I like him even more than Vader, and I know I'm gonna get probably a lot of pushback for that, but but
getting
but
spicy.
what I feel like, I understand why Rise of Skywalker did what they did, bringing Palpatine back, but at the same time, like, I'm the guy, and this is the same thing with the new Ghostbusters. I'm the guy, like, just like, the audience is not that dumb. We can handle new ideas, new characters. We don't have to be fed nostalgia constantly. Like, I understand, like, poetically why he brought Palpatine back. So basically now, like, it gets like, I'm the guy that, like, after the movie, I'm like, I want to see the next movie, because that's when the new shit's gonna start. Like, so that's kind of the same feeling I got for Afterlife. It's like, I want to see, I'm ready for what's next.
Yep.
Give me a new bad guy, give me a new, like, you know. I read somewhere that, like, the original JJ's original version of Rise of Skywalker was that the Knights of Ren were going to be the bad guys, and that they basically kick Kylo out, and then Kylo has to team up with the Resistance to basically fight them, like, in the outer regions. And I was like, I'm like, good, already 100 times better, like, movie, you know.
Yeah.
So, and but that still, there's a lot of moments in Rise of Skywalker that are just like, you know, chef's kiss. Like, I mean, the thing with him and Han, it's just like fucking always gets me,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
makes me cry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you feel similarly, but I'm thankful that we're still getting Star Wars. I'm thankful we're still getting Ghostbusters, because it's,
oh, oh, dude, what a time to be fucking alive. Like, I mean, like, the only thing, listen, and talking about that, like, I was one of those people, like, listen, if fucking Ghostbusters 3 got made, because let's face it, Ghostbusters Afterlife is Ghostbusters 3. I don't care what the fuck they say. Ghostbusters Afterlife is Ghostbusters 3. Um, if we got Ghostbusters 3, which was the movie especially after the 2016 movie bombed, like I was like, Ghostbusters is dead. We'll never get like a continuation. So the fact that Ghostbusters 3 exists, the fact that Clerks 3 now exists or will exist soon, um, I'm hopeful we'll hopefully get Hellboy 3 with Guillermo back. And I'm hopeful that we'll get I mean, listen, if we get Hellboy 3, then all my trilogies are complete. Ghostbusters, Clerks. But I mean, if you want to sweeten the deal, like if we get Gremlins 3, that'd be super nice.
You and Andre from Black Nerd Comedy would be so happy about that.
Yes,
But yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So
you mentioned Clerks 3, and you in doing the Guru Askew, you got to meet Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
And recently it kind of blew my mind because I subscribed to Kevin's YouTube channel, and you showed up in his discussion about Nightmare Alley, which was kind of going full circle. You're in Kevin Smith's house on his podcast as his co-host, talking about Guillermo del Toro and Nightmare Alley. So just on a personal level, like when did it sink in that you're not only in Kevin's house, but you're also like on his podcast and more or less like his Jay to his Silent Bob? Like how were you feeling when that happened?
Let me just first say that Kevin Smith, like I said I might have said this before, but like whoever says like don't meet your heroes, fuck that, because my heroes I've met, Guillermo, like Mike Mignola and Kevin, and they've all been fucking sweethearts. I've had I've been fortunate enough to like not just like get to speak with them, get to know them, but I've been fortunate enough to even like to go to their houses. So just like it's just such a like heartwarming thing for people that you admire and that you've been for lack of better words, like obsessed with like their work and as an artist, because like I think what I love about both Kevin and Guillermo is just like they're always constantly creating, constantly making stuff, so that to me is just like, oh yeah, man, like because I have all these ideas and things, and it's just they're a constant fountain of inspiration for me. So the fact that I got to sit down with Kevin and do that, it's just like you try not to like get too much into your head, because then you get to a point you're like, fuck, I can't function, like
you have like an out of body experience at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just kind of sort of have to just be in the moment and just like also remember, I'm like, this person in front of me is also a human being who happens to be one of my heroes, but we can now nerd out and have like a conversation about the same shit. So it's absolutely like there's a part of me that's just like shitting my pants, and there's another part of me that's like like in the moment. So it's a super surreal, like awesome experience, and I can't say but enough about amazing things about Kevin. He's just been the best to work with and do stuff for, because not only do I have the Guru, but I showed him earlier, but the Mallrats are coming out later this fall through UVD Toys, and these were also another thing that I just did through a gallery. I collaborated. These were sculpted by the Beast Brothers, who are kind of like pretty well known in the vinyl toy industry. They've done a lot of different projects and stuff like that. This was from the two brothers. It was Ernesto that I was working with on these, and I should also say Mexican Bootleg, which is another side brand that they have. But I mean, like, how cool is this? Like the Jay and Silent Bob logo is there at the bottom,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's Beast Brothers, Chogrin, Mexican Bootleg, and UVD Toys. So, and it's funny to see how it says like 2021. These were supposed to come out last year, but everything's gotten pushed back. Even the Guru was supposed to come out last year. That Guru was actually, the Kevin Guru was actually done in 2020. Like we finished So, but it's awesome, and hopefully from this we will continue a series. Like I'm working on we're going to do a whole line. So, but these were originally, the prototypes were done for the Gallery 1988 official Mallrats 20th, I think it was the 20th anniversary. So and I did it with because I already had made the Guru, so I kind of sort of did it as like, you never know. It's always a gamble, but I kind of sort of did it like, maybe Kevin will like these and we'll make them into toys, and it's, thankfully it worked out. So,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, he's
For for context, for people who are listening, Gallery 1988 is not only an awesome Instagram follow,
yeah.
it's also a physical location which you've had a lot of shows at.
They're
Yeah.
they're the gallery that has, I feel like there's a bunch of other galleries that I've worked with that have been great. Like there's Bottleneck Gallery, there's Hero Complex Gallery, but 88 in many ways was the first, and they're still around, and they're still doing it. I mean, those other galleries are as well, but I feel like 88 is like kind of the gallery. Like they've really, a lot of the big shows in my art gallery career have been there. I did one of my first big shows when I moved out to LA was the 3G show, which was, it was literally my excuse to do a Ghostbusters show. But I also got to do two other of my favorite movies. It was called 3G because it was three movies that start with the letter G. So it was Goonies, Gremlins, and Ghostbusters.
Nice.
But like I said, I'm a huge Ghostbusters nerd. So when I was doing this, when I knew this was my first big show in LA, and I knew I had to I wanted to kind of go in big for the premiere. So one of the things that because I've been part of the Ghostbusters community and stuff like that, one of the message boards, I put it out there because I was new to LA. I said, does anybody out here own an Ecto-1 replica? And when somebody said yes, I was my mind was already blown for the fact that I was going to be able to ride to the premiere in a fucking Ecto-1. But then not was even fucking crazier is these awesome people, Brian Fear, who owned the Ecto-1 along with Sean Bishop. They were like, hey, by the way, Ernie Hudson owes us a favor. Do you want us to ask him to come to the premiere? I'm like, yeah. I was like, so that it was inconceivable. It's kind of sort of like the same feeling of sitting down and doing the podcast with Kevin. I just remember thinking I will never be able to top this. I mean, and honestly, that's one of those moments where I'm just I was just like, how many people can say that they've been inside an Ecto-1 with an original Ghostbusters, So it's one of those things where it's totally an out of body experience. I'm like, is this happening for real? Is this shit happening?
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's even more motivation for continuing to do what you're doing, because you continue to find yourself in these experiences of being around your heroes, and it just continues to fuel all the amazing work that you do of absolutely lean into it, meet your heroes, and make awesome stuff with them. But,
and I will say this about Ernie Hudson. He is such a sweetheart. And as much as Dan Aykroyd is the heart of the Ghostbusters, because Dan Aykroyd has been over the years just been like Ghostbusters 3, Ghostbusters 3, Ghostbusters 3. I don't agree very much with his Ghostbusters prequel idea. I don't think that needs to happen.
Sure.
But I love God, we're going back to Ghostbusters. but I loved his original Ghostbusters 3 idea, which was basically anyways, I'll go back into that later. But as much as Dan Aykroyd has been the heart and cheerleader for Ghostbusters, Ernie Hudson has been on the ground level doing it as well. He's been to all the conventions, he's meeting the fans. So that's why when I say listen, I'm all for the new team, I'm all for continuing the story, but those guys have to be in it in some capacity, because for me, those guys are really, the heart and soul of Ghostbusters. And I think the silver lining from this new movie, even though I have all these different gripes with it, what I love about it is the love letter to Harold Ramis. Because I mean, you really, that's one of the things I'm so glad that Jason Reitman did it this way, because you really can have I think a lot of Ghostbusters fans didn't have that closure, and you can finally, this movie is kind of like this cathartic in many ways, so
it's a hug for the fans as well.
Absolutely. So anyways, I'm not going to go into my other tangent, but yeah.
It's all good.
So,
all right, so I have one final fun thing I want to do with you. Since we've been talking a ton about Guillermo del Toro and Kevin Smith, So they really have iconic sections of each of their movies. Like that's the whole reason why they, I mean,
Yeah.
so I would definitely call Guillermo an auteur. I know Kevin wouldn't want to call himself an auteur because he always
But he is. But he
makes
is.
fun of himself. Yeah, absolutely. Especially he's a damn good writer. I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name a movie title and you're going to briefly tell me your favorite part of the movie and why, but just briefly, like literally like knee jerk reaction of like, here's when you say the title of the movie, this is what I think of.
Okay.
You ready?
What I think or how I feel or just any kind of like thing, anything.
I'm going to name the movie title. You're going to tell me like the first thing you think of when you hear that movie title.
Okay.
Like the thing that matters most to you. Like, I'll make an example of trying to think.
Like it can be like I love the color palette. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Basically whatever way you want to interpret it.
Got it.
So,
yep. Can do.
Okay. Kronos.
The reinterpretation of the vampire lore.
Mallrats.
90s time capsule.
Hellboy 2, The Golden Army.
Del Toro making Hellboy his own.
Dogma.
A hilarious love letter to religion.
Pan's Labyrinth.
The contrast of reality and fantasy intertwined.
Clerks.
Anybody can make a movie.
Crimson Peak.
Love letter to Mary Shelley and gothic romance.
Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
High school after I'm trying to think. That was one of my favorite like high school like movies that we would watch with my friends over and over again. Like great sandwich movie. It's a movie to watch with a pizza or a sandwich.
And finally, Shape of Water.
Oh man.
Or Devil's Backbone if that's easier.
No, I love Shape of Water, but it's like it's still kind of like processing in my system, even though it's been out for a couple of years. I love that. I love it. Now, yeah, Devil's Backbone is for sure. The people are the real monsters.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Chogrin, thank you so much for your time. It's been so much fun to talk to you. But before we get out of here, even though we have absolutely plugged some of your stuff, I name dropped this in the intro. I love
this.
Jinx.
Yeah. Talk about synchronicity. Yeah,
buddy.
Man.
I love it. But let's plug all the awesome stuff let's just go back and plug all your awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So the floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. Thank you for reminding me. Like, because I was literally, you're like, oh, he's wrapping it up. I gotta bring the book out. This is another Guillermo del Toro project that I got to do with my good friend Pacoto, who's an amazing illustrator. That's one of the things that I'm also doing as I'm like, I don't want to say as I'm getting older, but as I'm getting busier, is just being able to collaborate with some of my good friends and people that I admire. And Pacoto is one of them. This is another thing, going back to the art shows, is I did originally for an art show another Guillermo art show that I did at Gallery Nucleus, and we did like a small little book, and I wonder if I have I'm not going to try to look for the original, but the original one was much smaller. And then we pitched it to this book publisher, Little Libros. And one of the reasons I wanted to work with it and I love them is because for the longest time, I knew I wanted to make children's books, but I knew I wanted to make them bilingual. So this company, Little Libros, solely focuses on making bilingual stories. So I was like, this is perfect. They had already done like a lot of Latino heroes of mine, like Frida, Richie Valens. So I was like, man, like, I mean, we have to make a Guillermo one, and this one is really cool because it's a story that I could relate to, the Guillermo told, which I think is very universal to a lot of kids. Like I remember when I was a kid, I was afraid of the dark, and I would watch a lot of movies that I probably shouldn't have. So I would imagine a lot of things like it would come and get me at night. One of the books
Like
that kind of got
like Chucky.
uh like Chucky, Pennywise. Like it's funny because I love those things now because I was able to overcome my fears. I mean, there's still a part of me that just every once in a while I'm like, what if if he's still under my bed? Yeah, like there's a slight possibility. But one of the books that kind of sort of helped me through that during that time when I was a kid is it was like Bert and Ernie's Scared of the Dark. And it was literally a book about like Ernie seeing shadows, and then Bert telling him like that's not a like a monster, that's like that's a piece of like that's a towel like moving in the wind, you know. So it's kind of sort of like sort of rationalizing things. So I always kind of love books that kind of sort of help you deal with that. With this, it's a little different because this is based on a story that I thought was very loving, that Guillermo always tells about, like not being able to go to the bathroom, and he would pee his bed because he was scared of getting out of his crib because of the monsters he would see. So he basically told the monster in the story that he tells, and and this is like in a lot of the interviews he says, is that, and this is why he started his kind of sort of like, you know, relationship with monsters, is like, if you let me go to the bathroom, I'll be your friend forever. And he's held true to that because he's put monsters in all of his movies, except for Nightmare Alley, which in a weird way the monsters are human beings, which is
Right.
actually a lot of that's actually a Del Toro trope, is a lot of the fantastical aspects of his movies. It's the humans who are the real monsters. So and that kind of follows through this because we kind of sort of hint at the relationship, the strained relationship that he had growing up with his grandmother, because his grandmother was a very heavy Catholic, and was always very against like all this like things that Guillermo was into. But they also
Right.
had like a loving relationship, and that's also, I think, very, very heavily referenced in Chronos. But anyways, this is an interpretation, like children's book version, where like this kid version of Guillermo befriends a monster, and you know he overcomes his like, you know, his fear of monsters, and you know, and things like that. So one of the cool things I always like to show here is my buddy Pacoto included Guru del Toro there. So
A fun
so
little Easter egg.
fun little Easter egg. So you get the Guru there, and um, and yeah, I mean, I'm super proud of this. It's so cool to like now have like, you know, do signings and have like kids come up and say like, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm not afraid of the dark anymore because of this. But I know like the everybody's favorite spread is this one, where you know, they
Baking
become,
cookies. Yeah.
but yeah, baking cookies, and yeah, like making movies and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of kids. One of the reviews that I got was a kid drawing the them making cookies. So you know, now I
That's so
think
cool.
and now I think in every children's book I'll incorporate some kind of food or or something.
Actually, it's
So
funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I think one of my favorite Berenstain Bears is all about junk food. Just because I love looking at all like the jelly beans and everything else.
yeah,
And for anybody that wants to purchase that, I bought mine at Target, but I think you can still buy yours at the Devil's Pantry, aka Amazon, and other
yeah.
retailers. But yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I think there it's available physically at Target, and like I think they have like a bilingual section. It's not available at every Target, but most Targets do carry it. They do have a little Libro section. You can get it on Amazon. There's other I think you can get it through Barnes and Noble, all kinds of you know, book dealers and things like that. But if you can get it at a local bookstore or a local mom and pop like children's book area, definitely you know, the better. So, but yeah, man, thank you for having me. Thank you for the shout out, and thank you for letting me show off all my crap.
of course.
So,
No, it's awesome stuff. Yeah, and then if they want to purchase your vinyl toys, they can go to sideshow.com, specifically under Unruly Industries, and purchase
mm,
there. And
yep.
then they can follow you on Instagram at Chogrin. correct?
Yeah, everything social media, Chogrin, like if you want to find any of my products or like books or toys, it's usually just Chogrin. Google. There's the Guillermo del Toro toys, Guru del Toro, the Kevin Smith toys, Guru SQ, and yeah, Sideshow, Amazon, and then I have a couple of other things coming out later this year. Oh, I want to plug really quick because we're almost sold out. I have this is not the final, but this is a small prototype. It's kind of a bad prototype, but there's a better, nice looking version of this. It's for my friend Andrew Bowser. He's doing a movie called Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls, and I got to do a vinyl toy of him that's available right now at fortuitousfilms.bigcartel.com, and there's only 50 of each. Again, this is a prototype, unpainted. It's got a crappy painting by me, but this is kind of a preview of what the toy looks like. It's a little bit bigger. It's more on the size of the Mallrats, so it's going to be more in this scale. So just imagine this, but scaled up. And I think there's only 10 left of each, and that helps also produce the movie that he's making of his character Onyx the Fortuitous. So yeah, check it out.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chogrin, thank you so much for your time. Sorry.
Yeah.
Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.